Millionaire spends his birthday alone in a cafe until a single mother asks to stay with him. It was raining that morning. The kind of slow, quiet rain that makes the whole city look like it's remembering something it can't forget. I sat by the cafe window, watching drops slide down the glass like time itself. Silent, unstoppable, and cold. It was my birthday, and I was alone. People often think that being a millionaire means you never feel lonely. That money fills the empty spaces inside you. But the truth is, money just gives your loneliness a better view. I had everything, or at least that's what people believed. The expensive suit, the polished shoes, the car outside worth more than most people's lifetime savings. But what they didn't see was the emptiness that sat across from me at every meal. The silence that followed me home every night. As I stirred the coffee in front of me, I caught my own reflection in the glass, a man who had everything except peace. And I remember whispering to myself, "Happy birthday, Maxwell. You've outlived your own happiness. I didn't expect anyone to care." I didn't even expect anyone to notice, until she walked in. The cafe door opened with a soft chime, and the cold wind rushed in, along with a woman and a little girl. The woman, tired eyes, messy hair, clothes soaked from the rain, looked like she had run from a storm bigger than the one outside. And the little girl, maybe 6, maybe 7, held her hand tightly, looking around with those curious, innocent eyes that only children have. They searched for a table, but the cafe was full. And then the girl pointed directly at me. "Mommy, look! That man is sitting alone!" I smiled awkwardly, pretending not to hear. But the woman turned toward me, hesitant. She walked closer and said softly, "I'm so sorry to bother you, sir, but there's no empty table. Would you mind if we sit here for a few minutes?" Her voice, tired, polite, a little embarrassed. I don't know why, but I nodded. Maybe because it was easier than saying no. "Of course," I said. "Please, have a seat." She smiled, a small, grateful smile that felt warmer than the coffee in front of me. The little girl climbed onto the chair beside her, shaking off her wet hair. And just like that, for the first time in years, I wasn't alone on my birthday. The girl leaned forward, studying me curiously. "Are you sad, mister?" she asked. I froze. Kids have this strange power. They see what adults hide. I forced a smile. "Why would you think that?" "Because you look like my Teddy when he loses his stuffing," she said innocently. Her mom, Katherine, as I'd later learn, blushed. "Lila, that's not polite," but I laughed. A real laugh, something I hadn't done in months. "It's okay," I said. "Your Teddy and I probably have a lot in common." Katherine smiled shyly. "Thank you for letting us sit here. We just needed a place to dry off for a bit. It's been a long morning," I nodded. "No problem. I'm not much of a talker, but company's nice." She hesitated, then looked at the little cake in front of me, untouched, a single candle flickering weakly in the draft. "Is it your birthday?" she asked. I looked at the candle, then back at her. "Yeah, not exactly a celebration, though," the little girl gasped. "Mommy, we should sing for him." Before I could say anything, she started, "Happy birthday to you." Her voice was tiny but full of joy. And as people around us started smiling, even the barista joined in quietly. I felt something I hadn't felt in years, and warmth. Real human warmth. When the song ended, Lila clapped her hands. "Make a wish." I looked at the candle, closed my eyes, and whispered silently, "I wish I didn't have to feel so alone anymore." Katherine smiled gently. That was sweet of her. "Sorry, she gets excited about birthdays." "No," I said quietly. "You just made mine worth remembering." She looked at me curiously. "You don't like birthdays?" I sighed. Not anymore. After a certain point, they just remind you of how many people stopped showing up. There was silence for a moment, the kind that says more than words ever could. Then she said something that stayed with me for the rest of my life. "Maybe people didn't stop showing up. Maybe you just stopped letting them in." I looked up, surprised, almost offended, but her expression was kind, not judgmental. She wasn't pitying me, she was understanding me. And that hit harder than anything. We talked for a while, about nothing and about everything. She told me she worked 2 jobs, barely made enough to pay rent, but still dreamed of starting her own bakery someday. Her daughter's father had left years ago. No goodbye, no explanation, just disappeared. And I told her, though I didn't know why, about how I built my company from nothing. How I'd chased success so hard that I lost sight of life itself. She listened, not because I was rich or powerful, but because she actually cared. It had been a long time since anyone looked at me like that. When she checked her watch and stood up, I felt an ache I couldn't explain. "We should go," she said softly. "I don't want to take up more of your time." I shook my head. "You didn't take it. You gave it back?" She smiled, that same quiet, graceful smile. Lila waved. "Bye, Mr. Sad Teddy." I laughed again. "Goodbye, little sunshine." And just like that, they were gone, out the door, into the rain. I sat there for a long time, staring at the empty chairs across from me. The candle had melted down completely, but inside, something had lit up again. It's strange how sometimes the people we meet for a moment leave footprints that last a lifetime. That night, as I drove home through the city lights, I replayed her words over and over in my head. Maybe people didn't stop showing up. Maybe you just stopped letting them in. I didn't know it yet, but that was the day my life started to change, because the next morning, when I walked into the same cafe again, I saw something that made my heart stop. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. I don't know why. Maybe because for the first time in years, my heart wasn't heavy. It was strange. How a few kind words from strangers could silence the noise inside me. I put on the same blue suit from the day before, skipped breakfast, and drove straight to the cafe. The rain had stopped, but the street still smelled like yesterday's memories. When I entered, the little chime above the door greeted me again. That same soft sound I'd heard before my life shifted. Just a little. The cafe was quieter today. The same waitress smiled politely. The same smell of roasted beans filled the air. But my eyes went straight to the table where I'd sat yesterday. And that's when I saw it. A folded piece of paper, slightly crumpled, lying where Katherine had been sitting. At first, I thought it was nothing. Maybe a napkin or a receipt. But when I picked it up, my name was written on it, for Mr. Maxwell. My heart skipped. I unfolded it carefully. The handwriting was elegant but shaky, tired, maybe rushed. It read, "Dear Mr. Maxwell, I didn't mean to intrude on your birthday yesterday, but I wanted to thank you for your kindness. You reminded me that there are still good people left in this world, people who don't look at others with judgment or pity. I wish I could tell you more, but life hasn't been kind lately. I'm struggling to keep up, and sometimes it feels like the world has forgotten us. Lila told me you looked lonely." She was right, but so am I. Maybe that's why we met, 2 lonely souls crossing paths for a moment. I left something for you with the barista. Please accept it as a small thank you. Katherine, I read it twice. Then again, there was something in her words, a quiet sadness hidden behind her politeness. When I went to the counter, the barista handed me a small box. It was wrapped in brown paper, tied with a red thread. I sat down, opened it slowly, and found a tiny cupcake inside. Just one, with a single candle stuck in the middle and a note under it that said, "For the man who forgot how to celebrate himself." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. So I did both. That day I stayed longer at the cafe, waiting. Part of me hoped she'd walk in again, smile, say something simple like, "Good morning," but she didn't. Hours passed. The coffee turned cold, and still, no sign of her, so I left. But this time I left a note behind too, on the same table. "Thank you for reminding me what kindness feels like. If you ever need help, any kind, come find me. My name is Maxwell Reed." I added my card at the bottom. It felt right. Like I was finally doing something that wasn't about business, profit, or reputation. Just being human again. Days went by, then weeks, but she never came back. I started to think maybe I'd imagined it all. That rainy birthday, the laughter, the little girl calling me Mr. Sad Teddy, until one night. I was leaving my office late, another long day of meaningless meetings, when I saw something that made me stop dead in my tracks. Across the street, near the corner of a dimly lit bakery, I saw her, Katherine, same tired grace, same soft face, standing behind the glass counter of a small shop with a faded sign, Sweet Beginnings, Homemade Cakes and Dreams. My chest tightened. I didn't even think. I just crossed the street. When I entered, she looked up, surprised, then confused, then embarrassed. "Mr. Maxwell?" she said softly. I smiled. "You left without saying goodbye?" She looked down. "I didn't think you'd remember us." "Some people you don't forget," I said quietly. "Especially the ones who make your birthday worth remembering." Her lips curved into a soft, bittersweet smile. "Well, welcome to Sweet Beginnings. It's not much, but it's mine. Kind of." The bakery was small. Peeling wallpaper, broken neon light, the smell of vanilla and hope. She told me she'd finally saved enough to rent this place. Her dream was to open a bakery that made people smile again, the same way her daughter made me smile that day. But I could see the cracks, unpaid bills on the counter, stress behind her eyes. She was barely holding it together. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "I could have helped." She shook her head. "Because I didn't want help. I wanted to earn it. I've spent too long being someone people pity. I want to stand on my own this time." Her voice trembled, strong but fragile. And for the first time, I saw what real strength looked like. Not the kind you buy, the kind you build while breaking. We talked for hours that night, about life, dreams, fears. I didn't care about time or business, I just listened. Before leaving, I looked around the small bakery and said, "You know, this place has potential." She laughed softly. "You mean potential to collapse in 2 months?" I smiled. "No, potential to change lives. You just need a little push." She looked at me suspiciously. "What kind of push?" "The kind that comes with no strings attached." That night I went home and couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about her, about that small bakery full of broken dreams and unbaked hope. So the next morning, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I followed my heart. I called my lawyer and told him, "I want to invest in a small business. But this time, I don't want it to make me richer. I want it to make someone's life better." He was confused. "Are you sure, sir?" "It's not exactly profitable." "I'm sure," I said. "For once, I want to buy something money can't measure." A few days later, I walked back into the bakery with a smile and a folder in my hand. When Katherine saw me, she looked nervous. "What's this?" she asked. I placed the folder on the counter. "A partnership proposal. You bake, I invest. You keep control, I stay behind the scenes." She shook her head immediately. "No, Maxwell, I can't accept this." "You can," I said softly, "and you will. Because this isn't charity, Katherine, it's faith." "In you," she looked at me, long, searching. Then finally whispered, "Why are you doing this?" I smiled. "Because someone once sang me happy birthday when no one else remembered." Tears welled up in her eyes. "You don't owe me anything." "I know," I said. "But maybe I owe myself the chance to feel human again." That day she signed. And that day, Sweet Beginnings truly began. Neither of us knew it yet. But that decision, that one moment of faith, would lead us into a storm bigger than both of us. Because sometimes, fate gives you a gift, only to test if you're strong enough to keep it. They say business partnerships are like marriages. They start with excitement and end with lessons. But with Katherine, it didn't feel like business. It felt like breathing again. For the first time in years, I woke up with purpose that wasn't tied to profit margins or board meetings. Every morning, I'd drive to that little bakery, Sweet Beginnings, where the air smelled of sugar, cinnamon, and second chances. I didn't sit behind an office desk anymore. I sat behind the counter, next to a woman who somehow made failure look like courage. Katherine would always greet me with that same soft smile. "Morning, Mr. Investor," she'd tease, brushing flour off her apron. And I'd reply, "Morning, boss lady." We were an odd pair, the millionaire and the single mother. But together, we built something honest. Customers began to trickle in, first out of curiosity, then out of love. They came for her cakes, but they stayed for her kindness. She remembered every face, every story, every regular's favorite pastry, and I watched her, every day, with a strange mixture of admiration and ache. Because somewhere between the laughter and the late-night baking, I'd started to fall for her. It wasn't planned. It wasn't even logical. But one evening, when the bakery had closed and the world outside was quiet, I caught myself staring at her. She was sitting by the window, the same spot where we'd first met, repairing a child's broken toy, something a customer's kid had dropped earlier. Her daughter, Lila, was asleep on the couch, wrapped in a blanket that smelled faintly of vanilla. Katherine looked up, caught my gaze, and smiled faintly. "What?" I shook my head. "Nothing. I didn't realize people like you still existed," she chuckled softly. "What kind of people?" "The kind who fix things they didn't break." Her smile faded into something softer, something heavier. "Maybe because I know what it feels like to be broken and not have anyone fix you." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was sacred. That night, as I drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing at the edge of something beautiful and dangerous. Because love, when it sneaks up on you after years of loneliness, doesn't knock politely. It breaks the door down. The next few weeks were perfect, dangerously perfect. Sales grew. Reviews poured in. Sweet beginnings became the little miracle everyone talked about. And Katherine's laughter filled that small shop like sunlight through dusty windows. But perfection, I've learned, makes some people uncomfortable, especially the ones who profit from your emptiness. One afternoon, as I sat in my office signing routine papers, my business partner, Jonathan, stormed in. He'd been my friend for over a decade, though in business, friendship is often the first casualty. "Maxwell," he barked, "I need to talk to you about this bakery nonsense." I raised an eyebrow. "Nonsense?" "Yes, nonsense. You've poured money into some random single mother's dream while ignoring your real empire. Investors are asking questions. They think you're losing it." I leaned back. "Maybe I'm finally finding it," he scoffed. "You're risking your reputation for a woman you barely know. Do you even realize how that looks?" I stared at him, not angry, just tired. "Jonathan, not everything needs to look good. Some things just need to feel right." He shook his head. "You're being played. Women like that see rich men as rescue boats. You'll learn the hard way." That last line stung, not because I believed him, but because part of me feared he might be right. That night, I went back to the bakery. Katherine was cleaning up, humming softly, her daughter drawing on the floor. She noticed my silence. "What's wrong?" I hesitated. "Someone said something today. Something about us." She froze. "Us? I mean, about this. The bakery. You and me working together." Her expression tightened. "And what did they say?" "That you might be using me." The words hung heavy between us. Katherine looked at me, hurt, sharp, but calm. "Is that what you think?" "No," I said immediately. "No, I don't, but—" She cut me off. "But you still asked, which means a part of you wonders if it's true." I didn't know what to say. Silence can be cruel when truth hides behind it. She took off her apron, placed it on the counter, and said quietly, "I didn't ask you for help, Maxwell. You offered. And I never wanted your money. I wanted a chance. But if that's what people are saying, maybe this partnership isn't fair to either of us." "Katherine, wait." But she walked out the back door before I could finish. That night, I sat alone in my car outside the bakery, watching the rain blur the streetlights again. It felt like déjà vu. The same loneliness, the same silence. Except this time, losing her hurt more than losing anything I'd ever built. Days passed. She didn't call. She didn't show up at my office. And though I tried to visit the bakery, she wasn't there. The lights were off. The door was locked, and taped to the glass was a small note. "Closed for repairs. We'll reopen soon." But I knew. It wasn't the bakery that needed repairing. A week later, I finally saw her again, but not where I expected. I was on my way to a charity event when I saw a crowd gathered near the bakery street. Something had happened. I parked my car and ran toward the noise, and there she was, sitting on the curb holding Lila, tears streaming down her face. Smoke was rising from the bakery windows. Fire trucks everywhere. The little shop, our dream, was gone. I rushed to her side. "Katherine, are you okay?" She looked at me, eyes red, voice shaking. She was inside, Maxwell. Lila was inside. I ran in to get her out. We barely made it. My chest tightened. "Thank God you did. That's all that matters." She looked at the flames, her voice breaking. "It's all gone, Maxwell. Everything I worked for, every dream, every piece of hope." I took her trembling hands and said, "No, Katherine. What matters is that you and Lila are safe. We can rebuild everything else." She looked at me, broken but fierce. "You don't understand." This was all I had. I met her gaze. "Then take what I have. Take everything I can give. Not because you need saving, but because I need you to believe again." She shook her head, tears falling faster. "And what if I can't?" I whispered. "Then I'll believe enough for both of us." As the firemen packed up and the crowd faded, I held her close, for the first time, not as a business partner or a friend, but as someone who'd finally realized what home really meant. Not a mansion, not money, but a heart that beats beside yours when the world is burning down. That night, as I drove them to my house, her and Lila asleep in the back seat, I looked at them through the mirror and whispered to myself, maybe the fire didn't destroy my world. Maybe it just burned away what wasn't meant to stay. I didn't know it yet, but the real storm was only just beginning. They say tragedy brings people closer, but sometimes it just shows how fragile we really are. After the fire, my mansion became their shelter. Katherine and Lila moved into the guest rooms, though to me it never felt like they were guests. For the first time, the house didn't echo with emptiness. It echoed with laughter. Lila would run through the halls, her small footsteps tapping life into every corner. She'd draw on the walls with crayons, and instead of anger, I'd smile. And Katherine, she filled the spaces in between. Cooking breakfast, laughing at my terrible jokes, talking to me late into the night about dreams that somehow felt less impossible when she spoke them aloud. I'd sit in my study pretending to work, but really, just watching her move around the kitchen. The woman who had nothing left, and yet somehow gave me everything. Weeks passed. Her bakery was gone, but I told her we'd rebuild it. Better, bigger, brighter. She refused at first, saying she didn't want charity. But I told her this time it wasn't charity. It was our dream, and slowly she said yes. We started again, sketching designs, meeting architects, discussing plans. Late nights became early mornings. Coffee turned into confessions, and somewhere between those stolen glances and silent prayers, we fell in love. It wasn't loud. It wasn't sudden. It was quiet, like the moment the rain stops, and you realize the world is still beautiful. One evening, we were sitting by the fireplace. Lila had fallen asleep on the couch, clutching her teddy bear, the one she'd named after me. Mr. Teddy Maxwell. Katherine smiled softly. "You know, she really adores you." I looked at her. "And what about you?" She met my eyes, and for a moment I saw something she'd been hiding. "Not fear, not guilt. Something heavier, Maxwell," she said quietly. "There's something you should know." The way she said it, soft, trembling, made my chest tighten. I leaned forward. "What is it?" She looked away, her fingers twisting nervously. "About the fire. It wasn't an accident." I froze. "What do you mean?" Tears welled in her eyes. "I think someone said it. On purpose." My mind raced. "Who would do that?" She hesitated. "My ex." Her words hit me like a punch I didn't see coming. "Your ex?" She nodded, shaking. "His name is Damon. He used to hurt me a lot. When I left him, he said if I ever tried to build a life without him, he'd destroy it." My heart started pounding. "And you didn't tell me this before?" "I wanted to, but I was scared. He's dangerous. He knows people. He used to work for—" She stopped herself. "For people who do things off the books." I stood up, pacing. "Why didn't you go to the police?" "I did once." "They didn't listen. He was charming, powerful, connected, her voice cracked. When the bakery burned, I saw him across the street. I thought maybe I was imagining it, but then I got a message that night. No name, no number, just 4 words. Told you I could. I felt my blood run cold. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window staring at the city lights, thinking about how fragile safety really is. All this time, I thought I'd been saving her, but maybe, just maybe, she'd brought danger straight to my doorstep. Still, one thing was clear. I couldn't let her face it alone. The next morning, I called in every favor I had. Security contacts, private investigators, lawyers. Money couldn't buy peace, but it could buy protection. I had guards placed around the property, cameras installed overnight, and even moved my meetings home. But Katherine wasn't happy. Maxwell, I didn't ask for this, she said, angry and scared. I know, I said firmly. But you're not fighting this alone anymore. She turned away. You don't understand. The more involved you get, the more he'll come after you too. I walked closer, took her hand, and said softly, Let him, because for once in my life I have something worth fighting for. Days passed. The tension grew thicker. Every time the phone rang, she jumped. Every knock on the door made her flinch. And Lila, she started asking, Mommy, why are there men outside? Katherine would smile and say, They're just our helpers. But I could see the fear in her eyes. Then one night, everything changed. It was late, past midnight. I was in my study when I heard a noise from the back gate. Footsteps, quick, sharp, heavy. I checked the security feed, 3 figures. Moving fast toward the house. Before I could call out, one of the guards shouted. Then gunfire echoed. The sound froze my blood. I ran upstairs. Burst into Katherine's room. She was already holding Lila. Trembling! Maxwell, what's happening? Stay here, I said, grabbing the gun from my drawer. Don't open the door for anyone but me. I rushed downstairs but by the time I got there, the intruders were gone. The guards were shaken but unharmed. They'd found a message left on the gate, spray-painted in red. You took what's mine. I'm taking it back. That night, fear turned into anger. I called my investigator, told him to find Damon, whatever it takes. Days later, he came back with files, photos, evidence. Damon was wanted for fraud, assault, and suspected arson. But he'd vanished. No address, no trace. Katherine was terrified. We should leave, she whispered. We should just disappear. I shook my head. No, I'm done running from ghosts. If he wants to find us, let him. This time I'll be ready. But no one can ever be ready for heartbreak. Not the kind that comes from the people you trust most. Because a week later, everything I believed in broke. I was leaving for a meeting when I passed by Katherine's room. The door was slightly open. I heard her voice, whispering, I did everything you said. Just please don't hurt him. My heart stopped. I pushed the door open quietly. She was on the phone, crying. She froze when she saw me. Katherine, I said slowly. Who were you talking to? She stammered. It's not what you think. Then what is it? Tears spilled down her cheeks. He has something on me, Maxwell. Something from before. If I didn't do what he said he'd take Lila. I stepped closer. What did he make you do? Her silence was answer enough. I turned to the table. My eyes caught a folder. Inside, bank documents, withdrawals, money transfers. My money, hundreds of thousands, missing. My voice trembled. You took it? Katherine sobbed. I had no choice. He said he'd kill her. I swear, I was going to tell you, I couldn't hear anymore. I walked out before my anger could become something worse. That night, the house felt colder than it ever had. The same walls that once echoed with laughter now echoed with betrayal. I sat in the dark, staring at the fire, thinking about how love can turn into pain so quickly. She had lied, but she had done it to protect her child. And somewhere in that heartbreak, I realized something cruelly beautiful. Love isn't about perfection. It's about forgiveness, but forgiveness takes time. And that night, all I had was silence. When I finally went to her room to talk, she was gone. Her and Lila, gone. On the bed, she'd left a single note. "I'm sorry, Maxwell. Please don't look for us. It's safer this way." And just like that, the woman who brought light back into my life disappeared into the dark. I didn't know if I'd ever see her again. But I knew one thing for sure: I'd spend the rest of my life trying to. When someone you love disappears, the world doesn't end all at once. It ends slowly, in seconds that stretch like hours, and hours that feel like lifetimes. For days, I couldn't think, couldn't eat, couldn't work. Every room in that house reminded me of her. The laughter that once filled it had turned into silence. The kind of silence that screams louder than noise ever could. Her note lay on my desk, creased from how many times I'd unfolded it. "Please don't look for us. It's safer this way." But how could I not? You can't unlove someone just because they've left. And you can't unsee the life you imagined with them, so I did what I've always done when I lost control. I planned. I made calls, hired investigators, checked hospitals, bus stations, shelters. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. Nothing. It was as if she and Lila had vanished off the map, erased by the same storm that had brought us together. People told me to move on. Jonathan, my business partner, even said, "You tried, Max. Sometimes people aren't meant to be saved," but he didn't understand. I wasn't trying to save Katherine. I was trying to find myself again, the version of me that existed only when she was around, so I kept looking. Every cafe, every small-town bakery, every market that sold homemade sweets, I searched them all. Because if I knew one thing about Katherine, it was that she couldn't live without baking. It wasn't her job. It was her heartbeat. And one day, I found it. It was winter, nearly a year after she'd left. I was driving through a small coastal town on my way to a property inspection I didn't even care about when I saw it. A tiny shop on the corner of a quiet street. The sign said, "Second Chances Bakery." My hands tightened on the wheel. I parked, got out. The bell above the door jingled as I stepped inside. The smell of sugar, cinnamon, and something achingly familiar filled the air. And then I saw her, behind the counter, hair tied up, flour on her cheek, the same soft eyes I'd memorized 100 times in my mind. Katherine. For a second, time froze. Then she looked up, and the color drained from her face. "Maxwell," she whispered. I didn't move. I couldn't. My voice came out lower than a whisper. "You really thought I wouldn't find you?" Tears welled in her eyes. "I told you not to." "I know," I said. "But you should have known by now. I don't follow rules when it comes to you." She looked down, trembling. "You shouldn't be here." "If he finds out, I already know," I interrupted. "Damon's gone." Her eyes widened. "What?" I nodded. "He was caught 2 months ago. My investigator found him. He's in custody. Fraud, assault, arson." "He can't hurt you anymore." Katherine covered her mouth, sobbing softly. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she whispered, "I didn't steal from you, Maxwell. I swear I was going to return it." "Every penny." I stepped closer. "Katherine, I stopped caring about the money the moment you walked out that door." She broke down then. Tears, apologies, shaking hands. I held her, not because she asked me to, but because I needed to. In that embrace, every crack, every wound, every silence between us melted. But just as peace began to return, fate had one last lesson waiting. Lila came out from the kitchen carrying a tray of cupcakes. When she saw me, her eyes lit up. "Mr. Teddy," she shouted, running toward me. I knelt, catching her in my arms. She'd grown taller, her hair longer, but her smile, the same sunshine that saved me once. "You remember me?" I asked. She laughed. "Mommy told me you were an angel who helped us. I prayed you'd find us again." Her innocence shattered whatever walls I had left. And for the first time in a long time, I smiled like I meant it. I spent the next few days there, helping around the bakery, fixing things, making deliveries. Life felt simple again, but underneath it all, something lingered. The question of what next. Katherine still carried guilt like it was stitched to her skin. One evening, as we sat by the window watching the sunset, she said quietly, "I don't deserve you, Maxwell." I looked at her. "Then maybe we both don't deserve each other." But maybe that's the point. Two broken people trying to build something whole. She smiled faintly. You always know what to say, I laughed softly. No, I just finally know what matters. We started rebuilding, not just the bakery, but our lives. We named the new branch Sweet Beginnings by Second Chances. And for the first time, it wasn't about money or success. It was about meaning. A few months later, during the shop's grand reopening, reporters showed up, curious about the millionaire who gave up his empire for a small-town bakery. One of them asked me, "Mr. Reed, don't you regret walking away from your business?" I smiled, glancing at Katherine and Lila laughing together behind the counter. No, I said. I didn't walk away. I walked toward something real. That night, when the shop finally closed, Katherine and I sat outside under the stars. The sound of the ocean filled the silence between us. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I used to think I was cursed, she said quietly, that every good thing I touched would eventually burn. I looked at her, brushed a strand of hair from her face and said, "Maybe you were never cursed. Maybe you were just meant to meet someone who wouldn't run when things caught fire." She smiled, the kind of smile that heals. For a moment, everything felt perfect again. But fate, as always, was listening, because the next morning, I got a call that would shatter everything. "Mr. Reed," my investigator's voice came through the phone. "We need to talk." "It's about Damon," I frowned. "What about him?" He hesitated. "He's gone. Escaped during transport." My hand went cold around the phone. "Gone?" I repeated. "Yes, sir. And one more thing. Before he disappeared, he told one of the guards something. A message for you." My voice was barely a whisper. "What message?" "Tell Maxwell. I'm not finished yet." The world tilted. The wind seemed to stop. And as I looked toward the bakery where Katherine and Lila stood smiling through the window, I realized the storm wasn't over. It was just waiting for the calm to end. There are moments in life when you feel the wind change, when the air gets heavier, and you just know something is coming. That's how it felt the morning after the call. I stood outside the bakery watching the ocean, trying to calm the storm inside my chest. Damon was out there, and I knew he wasn't done. For days, I didn't tell Katherine. I wanted to protect her, to protect Lila, and for once, to not let fear steal what little peace we had. But secrets have a way of finding their way to the surface. That evening, as I sat in my office behind the bakery, Katherine walked in holding her phone. Her face was pale. "Maxwell," she said quietly, "I think he's found us." She handed me the phone. There was a message. No number, just words. "Nice little bakery. Cute kid. See you soon." My blood turned cold. I took her hands. "Listen to me. You and Lila stay inside. Don't open the door for anyone. I'll handle this." She shook her head, crying. "You can't do this alone." "I have to," I said firmly, "because this time, it ends." That night, I called Jonathan, the only man I trusted. We contacted the police, but Damon had always been one step ahead, using different names, fake IDs, always vanishing just before they got close. So I set up my own plan. Cameras, trackers, security. But deep down, I knew. The real fight wouldn't be with fists or guns. It would be between fear and faith. 3 nights later, it happened. It was late. The town was quiet. The bakery lights were off, except for one, the kitchen, where Katherine was cleaning up. I was in the back office when I heard a crash. Glass shattering, I ran out, and there he was, Damon. He looked different, thinner, desperate, eyes full of madness. He had a gun pointed at Katherine. "Step away from her," I shouted. He turned, smirking. Well, well, the rich boy finally grew a spine. "Let her go, Damon," I said. "It's over." He laughed, that cold, cruel laugh that echoed through the empty shop. "Over? No. You took everything from me. She was mine." "She was never yours," I said, my voice steady. You don't own people, you destroy them. And that ends now. Katherine was shaking, tears streaming down her face. Please, Damon, don't do this. Quiet, he snapped, waving the gun. I took a slow step forward. You don't want to do this. Think about Lila. Think about what you're becoming. His eyes twitched. She's better off without her mother. That was the moment something inside me broke. I moved forward, faster than I thought possible, and grabbed his arm. The gun went off. The sound was deafening. Katherine screamed. Damon fell backward, hitting the floor hard. The gun slid across the tiles, spinning to a stop near the counter. For a second, the world went silent. Then I felt it, the burning pain in my shoulder. I'd been hit. Katherine rushed to me, crying, pressing her hands against the wound. Maxwell, stay with me! I looked at her, blood seeping through my shirt, and whispered, I told you. I'd never let anyone hurt you again. Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone must have called the police. Damon was groaning on the floor, defeated. As the officers stormed in, everything started to blur. Voices faded. All I could see was her face, and then darkness. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed, the beeping of machines, the smell of antiseptic. Katherine was there, asleep beside me, her hand clutching mine. Lila was curled up in a chair holding her teddy bear. For the first time in a long time, I felt peace. When Katherine opened her eyes and saw me awake, she broke down, crying. You saved me again, she whispered. I smiled weakly. Maybe we saved each other. Damon was arrested again, this time for good. The police found enough evidence to lock him away for the rest of his life, and for the first time, the storm was truly over. But something inside me had changed. Lying in that hospital bed, I realized how close I'd come to losing everything. Not just my life, but my purpose. So I made a decision. When I recovered, I sold the rest of my business empire. Every property, every investment, every symbol of my loneliness. And I used it to open something new, the Second Chances Foundation, a charity for single mothers, abused women, and struggling families. People like Katherine, who just needed someone to believe in them. A year later, I stood outside, the bakery again, our bakery, watching customers laugh, children play, and the world move on. Katherine came out smiling, holding 2 cups of coffee. Still can't believe how far we've come, she said softly. I looked at her, the woman who'd changed my life by simply walking into a cafe one lonely birthday, and said, Sometimes God doesn't give us what we want. He gives us what we need, in the most unexpected way. She leaned her head on my shoulder. You really believe that? I smiled. I don't just believe it. I lived it. As the sun began to rise, painting the sky in gold and orange, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not because everything was perfect, but because I finally understood that happiness isn't found in what we have, but in who we become after the pain. And that morning, standing beside the woman who once asked to stay with me in a small cafe, I realized I wasn't alone anymore. I never had been. The end moral of the story. No amount of money can heal loneliness, but love, pure, selfless love, can rebuild even the most broken hearts. And sometimes life doesn't give you a second chance. You have to create it yourself.